Hello, God's comic Brad Stine at Brad Stine Has Issues for Comedy. Conservatism and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. Tonight we have a very special guest, Ken Coleman, the co-host of the Dave Ramsey Show. So if you're still using credit cards and you're going bankrupt, I'm going to fix that single-handedly. Well, actually, double-handedly, because Ken's going to be here. And he is the co-host of the Ramsey Show, has his own show as well, where he coaches you in how to get the most out of your career or even find the career you have been missing all along. Wyatt, I know what you're thinking to yourself. Dad, maybe I should have listened to Ken Coleman years ago and I wouldn't be stuck behind this brutal heat of a soundboard, trying to find the right button, trying to turn the right volume, trying to speak articulately instead of this slave labor where I've chained you to your monitor. Why, maybe that's what you're thinking?
What I'm thinking is, how are you going to use the old change the monitor routine when they can see me now?
Oh, yeah.
That would have worked in 24, pal.
Ankle. It's an ankle chain.
Yeah, get me again.
Don't lift your ankles. I want them to think of you as somebody that they want to give.
Sorry.
Maybe they want to give to the ministry and help bail you out of jail.
I'm sorry, show my ankles? What is this, the 18th century? Come on.
Right.
Come
that,
on.
That would be, you could get arrested for showing your ankles.
I'm not doing that. Are you kidding me?
Loud. Well, at least you're wearing a skirt, and that's the good news. So, or as they say in Scotland, a kilt.
I mean, what's the difference?
There is none.
Yeah, no, what is the difference? Is there a difference? I don't know if there's one.
The name, skirt, kilt.
I got the difference.
Please.
Kilts have plaid.
Have plaid.
Yeah, that's it. That's the only difference.
Okay, yeah. And now that I think about it, in the human history, there's never been a plaid skirt.
That's why I made the comparison. It's the only exception to that rule. Kilts or plaid skirts.
I don't know how to say this, son, but the plaid lobby is going to be very unhappy when they hear.
Oh no, three bagpipe players in the audience over in Scotland.
Listen.
Got offended at the plaid skirt joke. Oh, heavens, no.
Wyatt, I got to tell you something. I think bagpipes have a great sound.
They absolutely do. They absolutely can work in most genres of music. Mm-hmm. People are just cowards.
Yeah.
They don't want to experiment with bagpipes.
You know what I love about bagpipes? Well, other than the ethereal sound, and by the way, one of the greatest renditions of Amazing Grace is done with bagpipes. But I think what I really appreciate about the bagpipe is the simplicity of it. But more importantly, the basically, let's make this name of this instrument about as on the nose as possible. We're not going to call it a trumpet, not a violin. We're not going to call it a cello, even a piano. All names that we understand, but they don't really in any ways let you know what you're looking at if you're blind. Let's say you're Helen Keller for the first time, trying to picture something in your mind, listening to something you can't hear. So let's not use Helen.
I mean, if we did, what's she gonna do? Hear about it and complain?
She can't catch me if I run. That's for darn sure.
She couldn't catch you if you stood perfectly still in an open field.
Good point, Wyatt. Well, listen, here's the deal. The thing about bagpipes is that they just cut to the chase. Hey, man, we got some pipes. We got a bag. What if we connected them, but we're going to need a name? How about a schlukuker? Nah. How about a bisasas?
So I have a suggestion.
Yeah?
Pipe bag.
Pipe bag. No, it might.
It's missing something.
Might be conflated with pipe bomb, which is going to show up later in Ireland in the conflict between the Protestants and the Catholics. Let's not go with pipe bag.
We're so close, though.
We are. How about air blower pipes?
No, that one's already been taken by the auto industry.
What? Bag? Are you ready?
Yeah?
Pipes. And now if I could just come up with a design for my kilt, I will have done a bat in 1,000.
So, do I have some news for you?
Hey, we're on a roll here, Kilty. Well, listen, guys, I got to tell you something. It's been a great week. Wyatt, did you do anything interesting this week that would make everybody just be in awe? We know you're not at Lowe's anymore, so there's nothing wonderful that can come from that.
Honestly, if I wanted a new Lowe's story, I could just pop on over and ask the guys I know there, what's happened within the last 12 hours? I'm sure they'll have something.
Are you sure the guys over there haven't left once you went? Because it's like, how are we going to survive without Wyatt? He's the one that kept us laughing, kept things light, and he's also gave us direction. You were an inspiration, Wyatt. The way you would come up with ideas like, I want to be a plank of wood to be the mascot.
I'm still not sure why that one didn't pan out.
No,
honestly.
Well, that's the thing.
I mean, besides the obvious reasons.
Which is?
I have a feeling... given our employee shortage we had back then, a mascot and a costume is the last thing that we needed.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, I was the court jester, or just here to boost morale.
Do you think that the plank would have also had an apron?
Oh my goodness, that would have been amazing. Now I can't stop but think about what the costume could have looked like. Dang it!
Well, guess what? There's still time. Perhaps you can go just as an amateur, just as a customer. And so I've got an idea.
You good?
Do they have suggestion boxes at Lowe's?
They don't have suggestions.
I see. So you just pretty much do whatever they tell you.
Yeah, you have no choice. You have no choice. Okay. One of the major factors why I even quit, outside of finishing up the college and just being ready to leave, was the fact that they had a employee shortage for about a year at that point.
Is there a difference between an employee shortage and short employees?
At Lowe's? Not really.
Okay.
But that's besides the point.
Oh, yeah.
So, throughout that entire year, we would be lucky if like half of the departments in the store actually had the required amount of people in them. Mm-hmm. And we would be incredibly lucky if some departments had anyone at all. It never got better. In fact, it got worse. People would leave and nobody would replace them. So they would just have us do more work. They had me on paint. Like literally scheduled for an entire 8-hour shift in paint. I worked hardware. Never touched paint in my life. Wasn't trained in paint.
I got to be honest with you. If you go around touching paint, that's probably another reason why you shouldn't have been there.
It's not lead-based.
Oh, okay.
No, they use mercury. It's way safer.
Aha.
As long as you don't, touch it or breathe on it.
That is some Quicksilver, you know what I mean?
I mean, Quicksilver was a pretty popular color.
Was it a color?
No, but they did have some other fantastic ones.
And your favorite was?
Les Brown.
And his orchestra?
Grayish.
Okay.
And then there was another favorite of mine.
Yeah.
Plum Brown. Which was a shade of red.
Okay. So just on every angle, you're confused. You know what? I'll tell you what, though. The guy that came up with Les Brown, I don't know if you're aware of this, also named the bagpipes.
I don't doubt that for a second. Probably he was wearing a kilt when he did, too.
I would hope so, and I hope he had an apron on so he didn't spill plum red, plum green.
My theory is he didn't have an apron, and that's why the kilt became plaid.
They should have called it plum crazy.
Oh, no, but they do have plum dandy.
Nice. You know, speaking of plum dandies, and we weren't until you brought it up, I wanted to say something to you about what I noticed in the news. Now, a lot of people that watch Brad Stine Has Issues, and you're watching it right now, and you're the regs. Now, notice that the regs watch on YouTube right now, and if you're watching for the first time on YouTube, do me a favor, go subscribe, hit the notification button. My people that watch regularly tell me it doesn't work. They hit notification, it doesn't happen, so they literally set timers on their phones so that they don't miss the episode. That's how loyal they are, and how kind they are, and how trapped they are, because now they are so fully invested. If they ever just vanish, like the bushquacker did, it's going to be noticed, and it's going to be brought up, and mockery will ensue. Wyatt, don't you believe that ensuing mockery is one of the hallmarks of Brad Stine Has Issues?
Yeah. Fortunately, getting sued is not
Yeah.
yet. But I don't know, man. We're climbing up the ranks.
Maybe we can get to a place where we make some money to sue us with.
Look, honestly, at some point, getting sued by a major corporation became like a badge of honor.
For sure.
For any like independent, podcast, news thing. They've all gotten sued.
Not us.
When's our turn?
So apparently we got to work on
We're
things.
still small fry, minor leagues. We got to bump it up here, man.
We've got to learn to say things that are provocative and that cut to the chase. Maybe I've got something here. It's not really anything that I'm making up or trying to...
I would certainly hope not, because libel is the one thing you probably shouldn't be getting sued for as an independent.
Well, I'm not liable to go that direction, but I will say this. If we were able to... I saw something in the news the other day, and I wanted to talk about it because one of the things that I think happened, believe it or not, Wyatt, when people first started watching Brad Stine Has Issues, is that when I first started this podcast, it was, and I've told the story a million times, so I'm not going to go deep into it, but I started out as a lark. I just wanted something to do, so I went to Facebook Live and just started talking off the cuff, and a lot of people watched. Now, it was during Corona, so again, they had nothing else to do, or they were on their death throes. But either way, they watched, and they liked it, and I said, if you like what I do, and you think it's important, I'll do it more if you feel it's bearing fruit, if it inspires you, if it helps you. But if it's not, if it's just kind of frivolous, I don't have to do it. I have a career where I can do comedy or do acting or whatever I'm doing. So anyways, everybody said, well, you like it. And so, but you know one thing, why I stopped to think about it, it's like, all right, well, if that's what kept me going and it's allowed us to grow this far, it was because I was saying things that meant something to me, something that I saw based on being a Christian, based on being a conservative, based on being a man, based on being blonde-headed, based on being short, based on being stuck with you as my producer. I mean, all of these handicaps, and yet I stood passionately for some idea, and I spoke about it through the airwaves, and I guess it was helpful. So I'm going to try to rekindle that. I always love talking to you. You're my son. It's fun for us to just have some fun. Clearly, people that listen to us hopefully like us, and they see the chemistry. It's all off the cuff. It's all extemporaneous. Not everybody can do that, and mainly because most people can't even spell extemporaneous, which I don't know if I mentioned this. My first band was called Extemporaneous.
Oh, really? Your first band?
Uh-huh.
Your first one?
The first one.
Not the, what is it now, like 72nd?
No, that was called Les Brown. And no, believe it or not, I got sued by some company that said we've already claimed that name. Anyways, I don't even remember who it is at this point. But I remember it somewhere vaguely happening to me. It drove me plumb crazy.
Plum dandy, but you were close.
Okay, but here's what I was thinking about. So I read this article about a up-and-coming Michigan, is she a senator? Excuse me. Yes. So, but I wanted to see if maybe it's important that not only do you and I have some fun, but that I do talk about the issues that are happening, kind of like Brad Stine Has Issues. Maybe I should stick to the script and talk about some of the issues that I see in our culture, and then certainly about the issues of my faith, because that's the single most important thing, not only in my life and the foundation of it, but for you watching. If you don't know Jesus, who claimed to be God and proved it like no one else, it costs you everything. So yeah, I'm going to bring it up. Now, you don't have to believe it, and you don't have to think it has weight, but I am responsible as a true believer to talk to you about him and what he brings to the table. But I also want to talk about the culture, because Christians historically have been told to redeem the culture, to bring the power of God's word and his perspective to the culture when we see it, so that we can try to bring healing and holiness and goodness and morals and ethics and virtue and things like that come from God, by the way. If men just make it up, it's only a subjective taste or preference, and it doesn't really hold weight, because the guy with the biggest gun can simply say, I don't like these rules anymore, and he wins. So that's why you need a transcendent law, a God who makes the law that we can't alter because he made the rules. But anyways, I was reading this, and it was a senator from Michigan who was concerned about the Democratic Party seemingly losing their way, losing people that are interested in them. They're not voting for them. They don't like them. It might have something to do with their desire and glee and butchering babies even after they've been born, but maybe not. Maybe it has to do with them saying that if a man says he's a woman, he can go race a woman in the pool, and when he beats her by many, many, many lengths because he's a guy, simply say, but clearly there's no difference in the physiology. So if they're going to make things up, and I believe in freedom, say what you believe, stand for what you believe, fight for what you believe. But people will disagree with you, and they're going to fight for what they believe. That's what freedom is. So this woman, and her name is Elisa Slotkin. So here's what she said. She called out her own party as weak and woke. Oh, my goodness. Now, anybody that watches Brad Stine Has Issues knows that whenever I talk to my guest, and Ken Coleman's coming up with the Ken Coleman Show, as well as the co-host of the Dave Ramsey Show. So he'll be here in just a few minutes, and he's going to talk about how him and I got to know each other, how he was involved in my career, but also what he does now and how he's helped people see and find their way in their business. And he wrote some books, and also has a show that you guys will probably be interested in listening to. But woke is what I always talk about. My job is to put the woke back to sleep, because wokeism has become synonymous with identity politics. What is identity politics? If you watched this show, you already know. If you're a conservative that does any research, you already know. But if you don't, identity politics simply means that people take identities and they give them a particular status and power. And that identity virtually always comes in the shape of a lot of people, a group. So you would be, if your identity is I'm a feminist, that becomes a whole group, and a group think. You're not allowed to go off script. All of us who are feminists think like this. If you identify as being Black or African American, then you have to think a particular way that they think, and it's always progressive, which means left-leaning, which means authoritarianism. Remember, whenever the left has owned the dissemination of information and owned the government system so they could control the people, when they had complete power with the undergirding of atheism at its core, it was communism. And if you see what communists do to their citizens who don't obey, it is the greatest travesty in human history. Marxism is an absolute train wreck, but it's evil because it delineates your agency. What does that mean? Your freedom to make your own choices, have your own perspectives, see the world through your own eyes. And by the way, just because you see something through your own eyes and you are adamant and passionate about it doesn't mean it's true. True for you, yes, but true for you isn't truth. That's subjectivity. Truth is objective. 2 + 2 is 4, the easiest example, for me and for you and for someone that speaks Chinese and somebody 10,000 years ago that spoke Egyptian hieroglyphics. I guess you don't speak hieroglyphics. Maybe you use maybe Wyatt would know. Why do we speak hieroglyphics or do we chisel them?
Kind of both. It's like, do you speak the awards, or do you write them down? You do both.
Thank you for bailing me out of that, Wyatt.
No problem. I saw you were struggling.
Well, just be ready at that button in case I go sideways.
Don't worry, I've got the boo button all lined up.
Perfect. So, the agency that they don't want you to have is the autonomy to make your own decisions. So, to be woke will always be spoken of by the left as compassion. We care about the downtrodden. We care about those without a voice. We care about the marginalized. Now, let me ask you a question. What is wrong with caring about the marginalized, people that are thrown to the side of the road and not cared about or watched over? Nothing. As a matter of fact, it's a Christ idea. If you on the left who have jettisoned God think you invented defending the marginalized, all you did was counterfeit the old parable of the Good Samaritan. Came from Christ, a Christian idea that you should take care of those who aren't even necessarily in your family, let alone live next door to you, because he called them your neighbor. Who's my neighbor? Who's ever in need. That is not a communist idea, because communism says that it will give to those, to whatever their need is. They'll get that need fulfilled. But the difference is there are people who need more than others. There are people that don't contribute the same as others, and yet they want to get the same thing. That is what it means if you believe in equity. Everybody gets the same, but not everybody has to give the same in, but they get to receive the same back. Is that fair? Well, nobody would think so. Nobody would believe so. The easiest example would be if you are progressive and say to yourself, it is fair that everybody gets the same, even if they don't contribute equally. And I say to you, well, does that mean that I'm allowed to disagree with you? And if you say no, then I have to say that's not fair, because you believed in equity, which means I get the same right to believe as I choose, not like you demand, and you have to dignify it and give it free reign, just like I have to give you. If you don't, you are a hypocrite, because it means by your fruit, you don't believe in giving everybody equal shares, because when they disagree with you, you withhold their place at the table of ideas and dissent. That means you don't really believe it at all. It means you want to control. But because that would be exposed, you say, you don't want to give everybody equal. You're a fascist. You're a Nazi. You're intolerant. You're a bigot. You're closed-minded. You are insensitive. You lack compassion. Every one of those terms I just used are insults and pejoratives. But notice one thing that didn't come with an addendum to those pejoratives: proof that it's true. If you called somebody a Nazi, there really is a definition for Nazi, the National Socialist Party. There is a definition as what it means to be a Nazi. So just to call somebody that doesn't hold much weight unless you can prove that they actually do and believe and behave in the ways that Nazis do and believe and behave. Or to be, let's say, intolerant. Well, let me ask you this. If intolerance is evil in and of itself, it's just evil to be intolerant, and the progressives always define intolerant as not agreeing to the way we see things. See, true intolerance would simply mean that you don't allow dissent. But progressives have changed that word to mean you don't allow my view to be the standard by which everything else is measured. So if you demand people think like you aren't tolerant at all. That's literally fascism. It's ironic that they call you a fascist. And what is fascism? It's just sort of government control of everything with a leader at the top that runs the show, and then Government controls the means of wealth and production and so on and so forth. So if you are controlling my ability to disagree with you, that literally would fit in a fascist or an intolerant perspective. So when you get accused of something and they don't prove it, they just assume it, then you are dealing with literally intolerance, bigotry. Bigotry is completely unable or unwilling to allow a different point of view or different perspective or a different type of person to be given equal dignity. So that would be a bigot. So if you say, oh, you conservatives are evil, so you don't get to talk, that's bigotry, which you said was bad. So here's what you need to understand about the left. They don't believe bigotry is bad. They believe you're disagreeing with them is a bigotry that is bad. The left doesn't believe that intolerance is bad. They believe that not tolerating their point of view and inculcating that as the cultural norm, that type of intolerance is bad. The left doesn't believe that helping the marginalized is good unless you help the marginalized. They choose are victims, and only they should be helped. As a matter of fact, they will choose straight, white, male, heterosexual Christians like me to be said, you've had too much power. We're stealing it from you. We're gripping it away from you. You will be cast aside. You will be, are you ready? Marginalized for the sake of those who clearly have been marginalized. So again, is marginalization bad? Not to the progressive. No, marginalizing people that we want to defend is bad. Marginalizing you is just doing our civic duty. Remember and remember well, when the only argument someone has that disagrees with you is an insult, it's not an argument. And very clearly, they don't have the resources, the ammunition to defend their position, but they don't need to. If everybody gets to just call you a name and then presume it's true. It's like magic. Whatever we call you is true, so that's how you have to be treated. Folks, that is not freedom, and I believe in freedom. Now, I just got started with woke, but let's go beyond that, and let's move into what this woman said, because I really wanted to go another direction, but this came up. Elisa Slotkin, Michigan Democratic Senator, called out her own party as weak and woke. And then, now listen to me, I'm going to self-edit my words because I'm a kind of a PG-rated podcast. Urge them to effing retake the flag. She uses the real word. As she prepares a war plan to defeat President Donald Trump and the Republican agenda. So they apparently are at war with different ideas. So they want to effing retake the flag. On Thursday, Politico reported on a speech Slotkin was expected to give in Lansing to Democratic volunteers and what will be part of a series of speeches addressing strategy, tactics, and tone. This is important. According to Politico, Slotkin's plan lays out why she thinks Democrats suffered sweeping setbacks last year, including focus groups of home state voters who she said described her party as weak and woke. She's urging Democrats to effing retake the flag with appeals to voters' sense of patriotism, to adopt the GD Alpha energy. That's right, God, you know what I'm saying. To adopt the GD Alpha energy of Detroit Lions coach Dan Campbell and embrace an airing out of potential 2028 presidential candidates in a broadly contested primary, which they didn't do, obviously, with Kamala. Slotkin, the newly elected senator who gave the Democratic response to Trump's congressional address in March, will focus on language and tone. Remember what I've told you. Whoever controls the language controls the people. Tone is a way to try to give the illusion of courage, strength, power, self-assurance by being aggressive. This is what she thinks is necessary for the Democrats. Not being moral, not being virtuous, not actually caring about our country's sovereignty. That is irrelevant. Butcher babies, we don't care, but do it loudly and do it with effing words so we can show how serious we are. This includes advising the party to stop using the term oligarchy. That's what they've been using, which she said only worked with coastal elites, and talk about opposing kings instead. No, again, whoever controls the language controls the people. So what they're going to try to do is conflate Donald Trump as being a king. He's certainly not a king, not a monarch. There's nothing to do with it. Remember well, accuse them of something, but you don't have to prove it. Just say it enough until people believe it. And it also keeps us from doing the hard work of actually having to justify our position, especially our position of being so crude in public and so aggressive, right? The left has become thugs. Antifa is leftism beating people up. I mean, come on, my friends. And to beat their weak and woke rep, Democrats should channel the no bullshit. I'm saving your poor ears if you're listening on the radio right now on Life Audio and you're a soccer mom who goes to church. Should channel the no bullshit. And in the Lions Campbell, she said, a wonderfully sappy guy with his players, but who is smart and tough. So she's somehow now trying to go to the Lions coach to show how sports-minded they are to get the working class blue collar. An aide described the planned speech Politico as part buck up, part come to Jesus speech. Of course, they use the term come to Jesus as an anachronism of getting to the root of who you are and what you believe. They don't believe in Jesus. They despise him. They certainly hate his followers. But it's a great word to use to give the illusion of spirituality that they have none of, other than the fact that they're progressive leftists, and to them, that is a religion that they will go to bat for. Many Democrats have also taken to injecting profanity into their vocabulary in response to MAGA and in an attempt at authenticity. For example, videos by Senate Democrats as part of the Shoot That Ain't True, not shoot, of course. Shoot That Ain't True social media campaign featured the politicians all reading from the same script and swearing as they attacked Trump for breaking campaign promises. Now, when you have resorted to language, crude language, when you have to resort to, any kind of, I guess, lack of decorum, right? A lack of civic, I guess, balance by not trying to use language that perhaps maybe some people wouldn't want their kids to speak like or talk about. If you have to use scatological terms like bullshit, if you have to use blasphemous terms or cursing terms like God, dang you, that's a curse. You're asking God to damn someone. That's what a curse word actually means, is any word that has to do with sending. Like if you said to someone, go to hell, you're cursing them into an eternal evil. So there are categories for what these words do and what they mean and where they fit. Scatological has to do with only feces, urine, anything that has to do with that kind of excrement used in language. That's called a scatological term. But the point of the matter is simply this. Now they believe that the way to move forward is to make America more crude civilly, to be less civil in our engagement, to be less deep in our engagement, and once again, a way to frame and hide a lack of true authenticity, but more importantly, having a point of view, a foundation, a principle that Americans will want and that they'll want to gravitate to. They don't have any. They always do performative means of getting their point across. Not their standards, there are none. Not their morals, they don't believe in them. Not in virtue, they have to signal that because they don't have it. Now, does that mean that I think that the Republicans, on the other hand, have all of those things? No, I think they are complete frauds, but more importantly, cowards, because they wouldn't stand up against these people for a long time. And why? Because they kept getting elected and never being held accountable for their cowardice. they should be held accountable. The one thing that Trump tried to do, or at least in his campaign, was he said, I'm going to keep the borders shut and we're going to make this, you can come in, but you do it legally. We're not going to let you just kill babies unless the state votes on that, right? We're going to not let women and girls have to compete against boys. We're not going to let boys in their locker rooms. That's what I'm going to stand for. If you don't agree with that, don't vote for me. If you do, vote for me. So the one thing that we are trying to observe about him is, did he keep his campaign promises? And the one thing I've heard the most about Donald Trump, I guess, is that he's the only one president they've ever known that said, here's what I'm going to campaign on. And then when he got into office, he did it. Now, bravo to him. And I would have said bravo to Biden or Obama or any president that at least did what they promised. At least they had integrity. But the fact that we in the United States have to applaud a man who does things that he promised to do is a greater indictment on the lack of morals and foundations in this nation than anything else I can say. That we think there's something courageous and amazing and beautiful and awe-inspiring to do what you promised all along. That's a very broken, immoral, vapid system that we have allowed to take place for too long. Who's the ones that can change this? Jesus Christ is God Almighty. If you are a Christ follower, it's on you. If you're a pastor, stand up on the pulpit and say, here's what is moral, here's what is true about the family, here's what is true about having children, here's what is true about morality, here's what is true about ethics, and speak it unapologetically about, here's what God says from the Bible that you said is true, you said it's sacred, you said it's God's word, then act like it. Sacredly speak these things, no apologies, and when people walk out, be grateful, they are going to hell. Remember this, many people will speak God's word. I did many things in Jesus' name, but they didn't know him. They used lip service. It's even a breaking of the commandment when it says, do not use the Lord's name in vain. Don't use the name of the Lord over things that he clearly said was sinful and are not, in fact, what he demanded us live like in a particular holy, sacred way. So this is where we're at right now. We're dealing with a group of people who want to double down, be crude, no rules, no morals, haters of Jesus. But all the believers and the Christians, start bringing your Bibles to church, real Bibles, so people can see it. They can see it. Oh, these church, what's happening? Where are these Christians coming from? Let us identify as believers, and this is a sacred text. We want to bring it. I know you have it in your phone. I get that. Nothing wrong with that. I'm saying when you go to church, bring this thing with you to get used to being boldly saying, identify as a Christian, right? Go. Make sure you tithe, right? So that you can take care of the church, keep the doors open, let your pastor have some income so this man can continue to work and inspire you. And folks, take care of those who are in need, the marginalized. It was a Christian idea all along. You know, that's your work ethic. That's your commitment to Christianity, because you're not called to be a Christian. You're called to be a disciple. That's the difference. That's a much more disciplined life. That's where we get the word. And so I'm asking you for that thing, to become that commitment, that all in, right? And it's going to take work. And you know what? One of the things we do more than anything on this earth is work. We spend hours working, so we can have food and roof over our head and clothes on our back. And so a lot of guys work, but they hate their job. Or a lot of people are younger and they're trying to figure out, what should I do? I'm 18, I don't know what I want to do. A lot of people are confused, or they're unhappy with their job, or they lost their job and they're not sure what to do. And they don't even really know what is the best job for me that I can excel and that I can be passionate about. And it's hard to know what that might be. Well, guess what? I got some good news. You're welcome. I brought on a man who's an expert and has coached over 10,000 people in regards to your job, your profession, your livelihood, how to figure it out, how to best understand it, and how to best move into that direction as God leads you so that you can have the greatest result you could want based on God's call and purpose in your life that he had planned all along. There'll also be some surprises for Ken, because before he got into this work, he was an agent for a talent agency. And that's going to be a story you guys didn't know, and you're about to find out. Remember, please listen on X and subscribe on Rumble. Also, please go listen on Spotify and iTunes. It's a shorter version on Life Audio that will build my growth in the Salem network, in the hopes that we can really build this into something that is helpful, inspiring, funny, informative, and edgy, I think, and hope, in a means to bring your spirit to a place of moving into a much more dangerous place known as true discipleship. Not going to be easy. That's what's going to make it worth it in the end, folks. I promise. It's a long one, but you can always listen to the shorter version that Wyatt puts together on the audio version, or you can sit here and listen to this or listen later. And for all of my my committed fans out there, and you know who you are, who watch it to the end, God bless you. You're going to like this. It's a little different, and I hope it might even be something helpful to you that you never saw coming. So please enjoy this beautiful, amazing, fascinating interview with an old friend and someone who has a lot to share that I promise you could use. Brad Stine and Ken Coleman. You know, Brad Stine has issues. Not only do I bring in eclectic guests, but I bring in people that, again, have an insight or a wisdom or a skill set that I don't have. What good would it be if I sat there and told you things I already know, because I have a limited capacity for what I'm good at, and there's some things I am good at, but not everything. So you bring in others to help fill those gaps. And frankly, a lot of times I'll bring people in selfishly to teach me things, and people I wanted to talk to. So you guys are just along for the ride. But not today. Today's unique and very unique. As a matter of fact, as much as I've had some friends on this show, if you guys who have watched Brad Stine Has Issues evolve, have watched my live shows, have seen my YouTube clips, have watched the now 7 albums that I've created, and all the different things that I've done as a Christian conservative comedian, and if you found that to be helpful or inspiring, or you hate it, you despise it, you can't stand watching me on the air, you have this guy to blame. Because the one unique thing about this gentleman, other than the incredible accomplishments that he has, which we're about to talk about, is, to be frank, he kind of discovered me. Even though I've been around, he's the one that launched me into the evangelical community in a way that I couldn't have imagined. And he probably couldn't either. Yeah. But he was a visionary, and he saw a genius.
That's right.
And he jumped in and took advantage. So we're going to talk about that on many, many levels. But so grateful to see an old friend that, frankly, I haven't seen for a long time. So please welcome the host of a brand new show, Front Row Seat. We'll get into that in just a second. You might have seen him on Ramsey Show. Ken Coleman's here.
Yeah.
How do you do, my friend?
I'm rarely speechless, but I have so many thoughts and emotions running through my head right now.
Wow.
Because we do have so much history.
We do.
And that felt really, I think you gave me way too much credit, but I remember watching you for the first time. And I was like, how has nobody heard of this guy? And people need to hear about this guy.
Yeah.
They need to see him. And it's like one of those deals where I was doing a little research, and it was like, and I couldn't find anything on you other than this VHS tape. But that's how long ago this is. Which, by the way, Steve Bridges was a comedian.
I was going to bring it up.
He's the guy that actually really deserves what you just said, because he called me. We were booking Steve. He's a great impressionist. And I got a call from him one day. And I said, "What's up, man?" He goes, "Listen, I just put in the mail a VHS tape," which just makes me laugh.
Yeah, right. So I put a lava lamp in the UPS.
That's what it feels like. Well, by the way, I have a pet rock.
Yeah,
with it. But I remember going, "Sure, I'll watch it." He goes, "Brad's a good guy. I know him. I've done a lot of shows with him. I think you'll like him." It was one of those recommendations.
Yeah.
And good on Steve for that. Because I think we all need friends like that who will be a cheerleader. And so Steve's the guy. So I watched it and I laughed really hard. And then I called you, and the rest is history.
Well, let me buttress that kind of simplistic analysis, which it was, and because it's not like it's complicated, but there is a lot more layers there that I don't think you ever knew. So I'm going to start with, I was going to bring this up, and I thought I might do it later, but since you brought it up, maybe this is the time. It did start with Steve Bridges, and for those of you who don't know Steve, he tragically passed away, I don't know, 10 years now?
Easy.
But he was well known. He was an impressionist, and he literally got latex prosthetics and looked like George Bush, and was on the Tonight Show doing it. And he was a great impressionist, but he's maybe the first guy that said, what if we literally changed my face to look like a little, they do it on SNL all the time. SNL probably did it prior to that, but it was more like makeup and hair. I don't think they did prosthetics and whatnot. This guy was like full blown, I'm going to become George Bush.
At first glance, he looked like W.
Yeah.
Because he hired, I think, a Oscar nominated or some type
that
of
sculpted the guy's face. And but I was at a show with him at it was a hotel room. It must have been, I don't even know how maybe it was here in town. I don't know why, because he lived in California. Of course, I did too years ago before I moved here. But anyways, I don't remember exactly what it was. I just remember I was there as he was getting his stuff applied. It took a long time. It's like it was pain in the neck. Like this, I hope you're making some good money, because this ain't just walk into a gig and leave. That's right. You got to put on this whole face. But the thing about Steve that was interesting is that him and I had many conversations over the years. We were both part of this group called Clean Comedians, which started in, I think, La Mirada or something, by a guy named Adam Christing back in the 90s, who was kind of focused on what would clean comedy look like if that was all you had. And it worked. Yeah. So that's how I got to know him. And we did shows together, but we would have a lot of conversations about God and the struggles with God, the hiddenness of God, the hard parts of God that just aren't emphasized enough for people who struggle with the hardest thing there is to know, and that is, how do I know he's really there? It's hard, man, and we make it easy, and that's why I think some people walk away, because we sold them a false bill of goods. Yeah. This ain't an easy road you're about to jump into, so don't think it's all going to make sense half the time. But he struggled a lot, and he was trying to build his career, and he felt like frustrated it wasn't getting where he wanted it to go, and blah, blah, blah. And I would kind of mentor him, I guess, or inspire him and try to lift him up, because I knew what it felt like trying to get your career going, and you can't. And I said to him, I'll never forget this, because I was talking to him at this place, and I said, you know what I've learned, Steve? You have to give it away. Yeah. Whatever it is you need, you have to give it away. And that's what makes Christianity unique. It teaches you need love, go love somebody. That's right. You need friendship, be a friend. You need money, give to people with even less. It's so counterintuitive to the natural man that it's either a supernatural metaphysical reality or it's just stupid. But he heard that, and I just was kind of saying it to try to encourage him. And he goes, give it away? You know what? I'm going to give it away. Here's a number. It's you. This is a Christian speakers and artists, and it was like the beginning of the internet thing. This is all brand new, doing stuff on the internet. That's how you book. It's like, what is this? Wait, what do you mean? What? I know I need an agent, right? And I need a label. You can't do it like, it's not like you're going to have your own personal computer someday and make your own television. You can't do that. No. Got to have some network exec saying, yay. And he said, here's this, call these guys. And so I did. I don't know if he just sent it to you or if I mean, who knows? I thought I'd maybe called you and said, I'd like to send you this thing in case you're interested.
You know what? Now that you bring it up, it's so long ago. Yeah. It's crazy how long ago this was. But my point is that when I saw the tape, I knew you had something special. It reminded me of my favorite comic of all time, Robin Williams. You had a manic style that we all know and love now. And yet it was just really great observational humor. To me, which is the funniest humor, is the observational humor. And you've always been
because it's something we all can relate to.
Yeah, and so it was just an automatic. And at that point, it was like I was hustling, wanted to build a business. And I thought, man, we can book the snot out of this guy, and Christians will eat him alive because he's safe, but he's legitimately funny. He's not like Christian funny.
And they didn't have a lot of options then for stand-up comedy. So
you had Mark Lowry, who was a different style. I wouldn't even call Mark a true stand-up. And I was his exclusive booking agent at the time, so I kind of had a lot of phone calls coming at me for comedians. And to your point, there wasn't a stable. And so anyway, really fun. The relationship, we enjoyed being together. We booked you like crazy.
You did.
And it was a lot of fun to share something that you had stumbled onto. And that was my enthusiasm. You remember, I was just so excited.
You were.
To share you because I thought you were funny.
Well, but here's the other piece, just a little addendum, but it's important to me. People don't know, I don't think, how insecure artists are. Sure. They simply don't understand that because
you're the product.
Well, yeah.
I heard James Lipton say this once.
Yes.
The famous Inside the Actor Studio, who's inspired a lot of my work. He once said this in his book, his biography. It's a great read, by the way. But he said that people used to ask him all the time, "Why are actors and actresses, so insecure?" And he's like, "They're really not as insecure as you think they are." He says, "Imagine you being the product.
Yeah.
If you're out selling copier machines or you're selling software, and the client says no to your presentation, while it's disappointing, okay, it's not personal."
Right.
They're saying no to the product or service you're selling. When you get passed over on an audition, or you're in the finality of getting booked or an opportunity to comedy club, whatever it is, and again, I share this, because I'm a speaker and an author. When people hammer your book or give you a bad review, it's personal.
Very much.
Because you are the product. And I jumped in to make sure that people get that.
You're right.
Lipton said it better than anyone.
No, it's exactly true. And so there's no way not to take it personal because it is you. I'm the entire package. If you say no to me, you're saying you're not funny,
That's right.
You're not clever, you're not equipped, there's better guys. I don't know. I'm passing on you, not on a flavor or a meal.
Yeah.
I don't feel like sushi today. I'll have this and say that's not what it is. You don't measure up, or at least that's how you interpret it. And so you
No way not to.
You no way not to. But this is a great addendum, and I love how these things happen organically, these conversations, which I know you know of because you're doing it. I sent you that tape, and this is back, just again, to date ourselves, not that it was that long ago, but it feels like it. So I had an answer machine, like you'd call the phone, and it would pick it up, "Hey, it's Brad," and then you could call from a phone and pick up your messages. I was in Indiana at my mom's house because I'm trying to remember if I was just visiting. I think I was just visiting maybe her at that point. I don't think yet I had decided. No, it couldn't have been because I didn't know you guys said. So it wasn't like I was ready to move here yet. But I sent this tape to you guys trying to just make a living for my family, take care of my family. And I'm with Mom, and I said, let's see what my messages are. And I picked it. Hey, this is Ken Coleman, speaks. And I don't have the word for word, but for the most part, it said something effective. I don't know why you are not famous. I don't know. You are unbelievable. Oh my gosh, we have got to. You gush. And what I would tell people is, it's like if you could write a script for what you would want somebody to say about you, especially an agent. If you could write the script, like I want to send my tape, and I thought De Niro, but no. Now that I've seen you, I wanted Brando, but wait a minute. And that's what it was. It was so heartening to somebody because you're so, I don't know if desperate is too much of a word, but you're so desperate to make it. You're trying to make this thing, and you're the product. So you got nowhere else to go. I can't make myself taller. I can't change. This is all I got. So if they keep saying no, I got nothing else I can do. And so it was so amazing to me because it felt like you're not crazy. You're onto something. You and somebody saw it. That means a lot to people. You didn't know that. You were just a guy trying to book something. You believed in it. You were passionate. You had the temerity to say that, perhaps just because you wanted to make sure I stayed with came to your. I don't know.
No, I'll say this.
I didn't start this to get accolades for me. But I wanted you to know how much it means to somebody to hear somebody tell them you're good enough. Yeah. You're what I'm looking for, because it's so rare, Ken.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you shared that, because I think there's two things that I would share for our audience that everybody can do. Okay. So the first is just on a tactical present moment lesson. In that moment, I saw somebody who I thought was really, really good, and I thought was an asset to what we were trying to do, and I believed it. Mm-hmm. So the lesson here is, number one, when you believe something, go all in on it. And that's why I called and was so enthusiastic, because I was like, I don't think anybody's heard of this guy, and I think this guy's special, and I believe in this as a product, Brad Stine. And so I just made the call. Yeah. I was so young and so full of passion that I believe every word that I said on that voicemail. But the lesson is, take a shot. Get behind something that you believe in. In this case, it was you. Now, the faith piece, I got to give this really quick, because here's what I love about the story. You were being faithful to the best of your ability. And in some ways, you're on the backside of the wilderness. And I'm sure going through a lot of doubt, but still hanging on, believing that God gave you this ability. Yeah. And he also gave you a desire. I call it talent, passion, and mission. Talent's what you're good at. Passion's what you enjoy doing. And mission is the result that motivates you. And you were doing all three of those things in comedy, yet very isolated. And that means it's very, very lonely, and it really tests your faith. And yet you stayed with it. And I believe God used me just as he used that ram in the bush. When Abraham takes Isaac up there, what's so cool about that story, we as Christians kind of miss this part. We're all like, way to go, Abraham. You're so faithful. And he was. And he raises the arm, and God stops him. And the cool part of that story is not just Abraham's unbelievable faith to be obedient, but it was that God had already placed a ram in the thicket so that there was already a solution to his obedience.
But he didn't notice it yet.
Didn't. And so
he had to follow through with what his call was before God could say, okay, now we're going to the next step. And there's so many pieces of this puzzle in our lives as Christians.
You never see it. I'm the ram. Steve Bridges, however he gets to me, he recommends you to me. That's
and that was a sacrifice to a degree. In a sense, we're competing for gigs.
No question.
So he saw that, but that's why I brought up what I specifically said was, you got to give it away. Because we tend to want to hoard things. That contact, it's just mine. I can't give this away. Somebody might get a better shot than me. They might take what should have been mine. And to learn to let go of those things and to learn to live a life of sharing and sacrificial giving, that's so hard to do. It's so hard to do.
And here's the other big lesson. What you did, Brad, is what everybody who's watching or listening to this needs to do in a certain season of life, and it's going to happen over and over, and that is learning that waiting is an action verb. Waiting is not passive. You were still doing gigs, you were hustling, you were scrapping and scraping, and you were just staying in the game, and that was an active waiting. And when God sees us get to that place of true waiting, all right, God, I don't know where the next gig's coming from. I don't know if I'm ever going to be big. I think I can be big, whatever it is. And when we truly get to a posture of, okay, God, and we turn the palms up, which has been very, very difficult for me. It was the way I'm wired. But when we get
What do you mean by pull the palms up? In more of a surrender?
Yes. I'm going to stop. I'm going to take my hands off the wheel.
Okay.
To quote the great theologian Carrie Underwood, Jesus take the wheel.
Okay.
And get to a place of service and of looking up and saying, God, I can't manufacture the future that I desire. And I think when we do that, God goes, great. Because the Bible says he'll give us the desires of our heart, but only when our heart is at a place where it can handle it. And I think in that case, I think for whatever reason, the timing was right. And God said, all right, Brad, hang on, buddy. I'm in the details. And it just all happened like this.
But, and that's providence. I mean, I think there's no accidents, just providence. God kind of has a story laid out for all of us that he kind of knows is going to happen. But he also has to have that, he has to leave options for us because we might disobey or we might not listen. You said something about, when you take your hands off and let God do it. And, as true as that is, Ken, again, I think one of the things that is so difficult, and let's just be honest, there's a handful of things about God's character that are just a challenge. The hiddenness of God is one of those.
Yes.
So often, any of us who've truly sought the living God have had these dark nights of the soul. I don't even know if you're there. I don't know because I'm trying and I'm hanging on, but this doesn't make any sense. And frankly, it feels that you're being cruel to me.
Oh.
You're being cruel to me.
Absolutely.
And so what I wanted to ask you, you gave the analysis of letting go and turning your palms up to say, I will wait for you. But it's almost like bumper sticker theology. In the West, we want these easy phrases and these easy content. But how do people really do that? Because I promise you there's somebody watching or listening right now going, I've been trying that. And he's nowhere to be found. So maybe I worked for you, but I gave him everything. But the wife left, the kid still has the cancer, whatever. Man, this life is tough. Yeah. So how do we move beyond metaphor?
Yeah.
And really live this thing?
Well, I'm glad you said it's really hard because I want to make sure I'm prescribing to people to do the hardest thing to do as a human, and that is to wait. We are creatures of progress. We are creatures of desire. So what I would say to that person is, I said waiting is an action verb. And so what I mean by waiting is not sitting pat, not just waiting for God to tap me on the shoulder with the direction of my life or for God to come in and intervene and fix everything that's a mess. That's not what I mean by waiting. What I mean is hope. The actual translation of the verse in Isaiah that so many Christians quote, those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings as eagles and soar. They shall run and not grow weary. They shall walk and not faint. The actual translation there is hope. So the idea of where does the hope come from? Well, it's back to this thing that you said a few minutes ago, that faith is really, really hard. Because see, faith requires a belief system that makes zero sense. And so therein lies, do you believe that there is a God? And you have to retreat to that in those darkest moments. Because if you believe there is a God, then you have to believe what Scripture says. And I could quote verse after verse after verse after verse, where it says he is with us. And there are many times where we don't feel like he's with us, but that doesn't mean he's not with us. So you don't get to claim faith and not have to use it. And so many Christians are claiming, so-called Christians, are claiming faith, but they don't actually use it. I want to go back to that scripture in Isaiah because God revealed this to me about 2 years ago when I was going through the darkest part of my life, just as a parent struggling with some stuff and just feeling like I was winning in the office but losing at home, and it was a real difficult time. It was very confusing. And I read that verse in a real broken season, and God revealed something to me that I'd never seen before. So I think Isaiah, in his brilliance, is revealing to us that there are seasons of life, and there are paces for those seasons.
Paces?
Paces. As in, let's think about
okay.
pace at which we move. So to go back to the scripture, And I'm not trying to turn this into a Bible study, but I really want to share this with people. He starts off by saying they will soar on wings as eagles. And if you just think of a majestic eagle, we've all seen the National Geographic video, and that eagle is effortlessly soaring. The wind is lifting it, and it is just effortless and majestic. And there are sometimes in life, in our personal life, our professional life, where we're soaring. It just feels like it's effortless. What a day. And I have days like that, you know? And then he downshifts. He then goes, they shall run and not grow weary. And then they shall walk and not faint. He's downshifting from this effortless soaring. Then he's going. And I took that as, man, there are seasons where if I'm building a business, if I'm starting a church, I'm a new parent, I've got 3 little toddlers or whatever it is, and you just feel like you're in a sprint, you know, or a marathon. You pick the analogy, you know. And he says, they won't grow weary. So run and not grow weary. And walk. And then he goes to walk. And I think of days and months and seasons of life where you're just barely putting one foot in front of the other. Could be a medical issue. Could be a deep relationship pain. We're talking about I'm just putting one foot in front of the other. And you're so burdened that he just promises you won't faint.
Yeah.
He didn't say, you know, you'll walk with a limp and you're not going to feel it. No, he said they shall walk and not faint. I mean, that means you're just barely holding on. And so all that to say that when we as Christians, or somebody who loves you and maybe they haven't chosen to walk by faith yet, back to the question, how do we reconcile bad crap happening? Well, it's back to this faith issue. If you believe there's a God and you believe that there is Satan, the Bible makes it clear.
There's the war.
He gave power over this earth to Satan for a time. And so the best analogy I've ever heard on this was from a pastor by the name of Rick McKinley, so I want to give Rick credit. But I asked Rick one time, we were going through a season of infertility, and it was the worst. It was awful. And I looked at him and I said, why do bad things happen to good people? I just kind of laughed and said, what's your theological answer to that?
Yeah.
And he said, imagine a dictator from another country coming to the United States to visit with the president. He has all power, all authority in his country. But when he comes to the United States, he doesn't have that authority. And until Jesus returns, Satan is the ultimate authority on this planet. Does God intervene? Yes. Does he will? Yes. But he has for a time given all power to Satan, which means he's the ruler. Now, when Jesus returns and takes Satan out, then it changes. But until then, I think we're going to have to wrestle with the fact that this is how God has willed it, and we are in a fallen world. And when we are in a fallen world, bad stuff happens to everybody. And faith in Jesus is not a get-out-of-jail card.
Sometimes it's thrown in jail card.
Let's not forget, Apostle Paul lost his head.
Right.
And all the disciples lost their lives. So at risk of going too deep, I know you didn't have me here for Theology 101.
We go wherever God's sending us.
I want people to understand, like, that's part of the deal with faith.
Yeah.
I don't know everything. I don't know why God has allowed me to go through crazy pain. I was a virgin when I got married. I'm one of the last of the Mohicans on that one. Like, I don't know how many people were virgins when they got married. I don't say that to brag. I'm just saying, and then we went through 7 years of infertility, and you don't think that I asked God?
Yeah. So wait a minute. I did all this time avoiding this thing to try to be moral and
I had
virtuous.
friends that fathered children while I was in high school.
Yeah.
I walked away. I did the Joseph thing.
Yeah.
Hey, God, what was that all about?
Yeah.
And in my sophomoric faith, that was my answer, but I'm being honest. Why my wife was a virgin too? What's the deal? Why we saved ourselves and you put us through this?
Yeah, like you're mocking us. Well, I like the idea of you finding those 3 paces of the soaring and the running and the walking, because I haven't really thought that through. But it does indicate that sometimes like you said, walk and not faint means you must be walking a long time, because why would I faint walking? What's easier than that other than sitting? But
Or I'm
if
carrying such a heavy
so
burden.
something is going on in this walk that has actually slowed me down. It's taking longer to get there than if I was in a plane. So there you have that challenge. And I always differentiate Western and American Christianity from Middle East and so forth, because what they suffer over there and yet are committed means they have a different level of a sacredness of what Christianity means to them, because it literally does come with a price that we think is a metaphor, but to them it's like, this is real. Your dad might be beheaded in front of us, and they are.
And you still believe it?
And yeah,
Like
right.
when that kind of stuff is on the line.
Yes.
And you're forced to go, do you believe it?
Yeah.
Because believing it means you may die.
That's it. And yet, we're all going to die. So whether it's deny Jesus, no, boom. Or I'm 85 years old, it's time to go, boom. Either way, I move into eternity. Now, what did I do with that? What did I do with that journey? And how did I represent God in the meantime? Because I don't know why we in the faith community look at challenges and pain and difficulty and hurdles as a punishment or an aberration. And God says, how else am I going to teach you anything? You don't learn anything from going on a vacation. It's all fun.
Yeah.
What you learn from is when you lose the job, when the child is sick, when you can't get pregnant, when they walk out on you. That's where you have to build muscles. And the only way you can learn, you grow from pain, not pleasure. You just do. But we don't want to.
No.
I want to look good. I don't want to work out.
So true.
I want to look good, but I ain't going to not eat the cake. Well, then you don't want to look good. You want to talk about it.
You like the idea
Yeah.
of it. There's a difference between liking the idea of success or liking the idea of a healthy marriage or liking the idea of physical health. You can like the idea, but until one gets to a place of conviction, in other words, no matter what we want in life, until you get to a place where you go, oh, I really want that for this reason, a specific reason. It's the science of motivation.
Yeah.
If you actually look behind, okay, there's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Now, this is in the world of work that I've been in for years.
Yeah.
Because I believe that Genesis chapter 2 makes it very clear we were created to work. So I've got a very anti-woke, anti-whatever view of work. I think work is not something that we do to live only. I think it's about provision, yes, but also contribution. And that's the part that we don't talk about, is the contribution part.
Right.
In other words, I'm excited about putting this result in the world. For you, it's making people laugh, which is the feeling part. And then you slip in some of that, razor wit theology or political belief. And that's you making people think. But you like to make people think and feel. That's how I would describe you, just watching an artist, because it matters to you. I want them to laugh, yes, but I also want them to think.
But it's interesting, Ken, when my life began to be changed, like when I met you and Christian Speakers and Artists, when that kind of really threw me into the deep end of the Christian pool. This is who you're going to be now.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I made that commitment, but it was the death of my mainstream career. I wasn't going to be in Tonight Show. And I had all that stuff. And even today, even in this day and age, there's a lot more Christian comics out there, and there's some great ones. Excellent, who've done quite well, sold tons of tickets. I've never sold tons of tickets, have built a bigger name for themselves. And you start going, gee, I don't understand. And then I realized, I realized that what God wanted me to say from the stage was more important than getting laughs.
Right.
So I became a hybrid. I no longer was just a stand-up. I couldn't call myself that. This is ministry. God says, your gift is not comedy. Your gift is communication. The flavor it comes in is funny. That's
agree
just
with
the
that.
way I do it. That's the way.
It's the style, not the substance.
That's it. But people, I think, sometimes don't understand, or maybe they underestimate or shortchange themselves and think, well, I don't really accomplish much. I'm just a guy on the assembly line, blah, blah, blah. Well, wait a minute. You have a sphere of influence. That's yours. Might be 2 people, but it's your 2 people.
That's exactly right.
So get busy with them. You know, you talked about work as something that is a contribution. Look, at the Garden of Eden, when God gave perfection to them, and he said, here's trees, and here's animals, and here's food, and here's sustenance, and here's the... You know what he didn't do? He didn't make a hammock.
No.
He said, now go to work.
Yeah, he literally says,
Tend to
subdue.
subdue this. Take care of this. Make more people. Yeah. And also create. Take what I've given you. See what you can come up with. Yeah. How about radios and televisions and computer? Yeah. See what I've given you, and then go do your version. So apparently God expects us to partner with him as we live in the world.
100%. Unless I forget, the creator of the universe worked.
Yeah.
Scripture says he worked. He's omnipotent. This is the thing that blows my mind. And this may be a neurosis, I don't know, but I lay awake some nights thinking about the God of the universe. Omnipotent means all-powerful, works so hard he needed a break.
Yeah, right. I am beat.
Yeah. I mean, you process however you want to. And so I think that back to this motivational piece, because here's the methodology that I teach about work. Because I think there's a lot of people that need this, and parents, we've got to take back control of the narrative in America about work and contribution in their future, because what we've been sold is a lie. Give me a couple minutes, I'm going to roll real fast on this, but this is, people are going to like this. We've been sold a lie that a bunch of powerful people created years ago to manufacture workers for a manufacturing economy. And so it was, let's stick them in school 8 hours a day, right?
And get women in the workforce.
That's right. And let's test them.
Yeah.
And so this whole system has created test takers, not pathfinders. In other words, we dumb the curiosity out of these brilliant humans. They come into this world with wonder.
Yeah.
True wonder.
Yeah.
Christmas morning wonder. And they ask us, I just saw your beautiful grandkids. If I hung out with those 2 little boys down there and I just hung out with them for 10 minutes, they'd ask me a million questions. Not because they're trying to be obnoxious.
Yeah.
They're trying to get to the bottom of it. By the time that the average student in America reaches the 8th grade, they're only asking 2 to 3 questions a day. This is from the University of Michigan. So we're beating the curiosity out of our kids. Now here's what happens. So then about 9th grade, the cultural pressure turns up on parents, and then parents turn it up on their unsuspecting kids. And we've already beaten the curiosity out of them. Now we go, all right, every grade, every quiz, every missed day, everything counts against your record, because you need a stellar record so that you can get into a good school and get a good degree and get a good job. And then the humanist goes, blah, and they come out in the world and they call the Ken Coleman Show because they're miserable at 35 because all they ever wanted to do was work with horses, but their dad told them unwittingly at 17, sweetheart, you can't make a good living doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, I've painted the picture. Here's what happens. Satan is using that system to beat the wonder out of us. And David says in Psalm 139, 13, 14, my favorite passage of Scripture, you knit me together in my mother's womb. It uses the knitting analogy, and that's multiple pieces of thread. I think there's 3 threads everybody has. Talent, what you're good at. And through education and experience, you can hone that talent, if it's a ball of clay, into a very usable object. Then there's passion. The root word for passion means to suffer. And passion is, I love something so much I'm willing to suffer. I mean, tell you, a stand-up comedian suffers. They suffer in the early days, and a craftsman suffers injury in order to craft something that they believe in. And the last thread is the missional thread, and that is motivation. And that's that intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is what I say to my teenage boys. You got to clean the room, or you're not hanging out with friends. They're not coming over. This is squalor. And they gripe and complain, and they do it. That's good parenting. It's horrible leadership. Intrinsic motivation is to find out what makes a person come alive. What result do they want to put in the world? In other words, I do something that I enjoy to then create a result that matters to me. This is where our value system comes in. So to the point that you made about the person who just does a widget, I can see how you would feel very lonely at times. Does what I'm doing
Or that you're not contributing much.
Yeah, but the point is you got to look at that product that you make and go, how does it bless the lives of others? And to see the simplistic contribution that God wired you to make. And therein lies meaning. And it's coming from your creator who created you, Ephesians 2:10, to do good works. 2 Timothy 2:15, the King James Version I use because it sounds better. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed. So there's my little stump speech for why I'm in the space of helping people win at work. Because I believe that when you are winning at work, you have the best chance of winning in life. In other words, if your personal life is okay or good, but your work life sucks, you're dragging that home with you. And the opposite is true. You could be winning at work and your personal life be a dumpster fire and you're dragging that in. And so to truly be the person God created you to be, you have to have a work component where you are creating results that mean something to you. And that is in essence, honoring your creator. So that's the essence of this.
But sometimes people are so far down the road that they feel like I kind of have defined my career and I don't like it, but I'm kind of stuck. I got a mortgage payment.
That's
I got
fair.
I'm kind of
stuck. That question all the time.
Yeah, well, and you would. I probably told this story before, but anyways, I would take summers in high school to work, and it was a box factory, and they'd make boxes. And so and there are different machines doing different things. And one of them would put out like 50 pre-stamped sheets of paper. You get about 50, you pull them out, two guys, me and the other guy with a hammer. You break off the perforated edges, and you'd end up with what would become a box that people can fold into it. You pick them up, you put it in another box, boom, 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 until it gets full, shut it, tape it, and then you look and there's another stack and you do it again. And that was your job. Now, it was only for the summer. Ken, I did about, an hour's worth of this thing.
Yeah.
And I would finish that and I'd put it there and I'd look up and there was another 50 stinking just pieces of paper. I thought I was going to cry.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't do this.
Soul crushing.
Oh my! And it taught me a wonderful lesson.
Yeah.
It did. I'm 17, 18. I said, here's what I know. I don't know what I'm going to do in my life, but I do know this. I'm not working in a factory.
Right.
Because I literally, psychologically, I can't do this.
That's right.
I would kill myself. Because I was a creative. I had this other way of what I had to do. And in some ways that horror motivated me because I could always think, if you don't do this, that's what it's waiting for you. And I can't do that. So make it a beautiful motivation to go seek that thing. My dad even said at one point, I would want you to do this, but, maybe you should go to college, just have something to fall back on. And I remember thinking in my head, you don't get it.
Yeah, no.
I'm doing this. There is no fallback. Now, this is the old burning the bridges. It's a very old principle that you don't give an option to retreat and you have to move forward. Now, everybody is wired that way. But here's the thing really I was trying to get at, even though perhaps I'm sure people can understand what we just said and might feel stuck in that regard. But here's another thing, and I want to get your thoughts on this. But there's a guy that can sit there and pull those 50 and pop them out and stick him in there all day long, go home, he's happy. I need him.
Without question.
I can't do that. But thank God a guy made a box for me. And you know what you get to do? You come home, come out to the club, I'll make you laugh. I'll do my part. I'll give you my giftedness. But what I want to say to them is thank you.
Yeah.
For being on the assembly line or whatever other kind of minute, difficult, I don't want to say mindless because I don't want to sound like I'm being a pejorative. It's just, you have to have the countenance that allows you to be kind of go with the flow. I don't have it. So talk to these people though that maybe feel like I don't really I'm just this cog in a wheel. I'm okay with it. I'm fine with it. But maybe there's like, I don't think they honor themselves as much as they should. I don't think they realize, and I'm not even saying they're lamenting, I'm stuck in the thing. Some do, but some might say, I'm good with it, but I'm nothing. Oh, how important you are to be that guy.
Yeah, so here's what you have to understand. Yeah, so Brad and I are both creatives, and so we are wired for influence and achievement. I just know you well enough to know if you took my Get Clear assessment, which, by the way, the Get Clear career assessment is a fabulous 18-minute assessment, and it's going to give you a unbelievably great report on those three things I've been talking about: talent, passion, and mission. It's not a personality profile. That's a bunch of junk science. This is going to measure things that
It's not the Enneagram.
well, that, you should never pick a career based on a personality profile. It's just bad science.
Okay.
What you should be looking at is the methodology that I have developed after coaching 10,000 people.
Yeah.
So this isn't something I just came up with in the middle of the night. It was
It's pragmatic. You've watched it work.
I watch it work. Here's the deal. If you use what you do best to do what you love to produce results that matter, think about that sentence. Use what you do best to do something you love to produce a result you care about. That's the purpose of God in your life. I don't care if it's as a paycheck, could be a ministry, volunteer thing. But back to your question. So you're that person who you feel like you're a cog in the wheel and you're just kind of doing this thing and it's not, nobody knows about it. Maybe it's very processed. It feels little. Well, here's the deal. The littlest part can bring a car down. We all know that. We've all had to pay for something. We're like, what? That costs $600? That's a little thing? Yeah, it does, because your car doesn't work without that little part. So let's think about the whole, and that's what you were encouraging them to think about. Let's think about the way the world works. Let's also look at the way you were designed. And getting to a place of peace and healthiness about the way you were designed is a game changer. It's the one weapon that Satan uses to disrupt the world and try to drive people far from God, is to make them think less of themselves. And the creator of the universe is looking at you with a broad smile today going, I created you for a reason. Part of the reason I want you to figure out. But if you acknowledge that I created you to be really good with details, very analytical maybe, I created you to love order and efficiency, to be motivated by excellence. And you begin to see yourself through the eyes of your maker. And I've got these distinct talents. I have these distinct passions, and I'm really motivated by this result. Could be service, solution, efficiency. If you begin to see yourself that way and you go, wait, the world needs people like me, because the Kens and the Brads, if they were in charge of what I do, well, we'd have a 4-alarm fire. You know, and I think when you begin to create a narrative in the lens of your maker, and I hope I've given people a construct to be able to go, oh, okay, that does make sense. The world needs people like me. I do matter. There are people who will never know my name, but will experience something positive today because of a result of me doing good work. That becomes the narrative. And nobody said it better than Martin Luther King Jr., so I'll wrap my answer with his famous words. He gets credit for a lot of great speeches. I think the most powerful thing he ever said was to a bunch of middle schoolers in Philadelphia. It was a last-minute request for him to stop by, and it's where, and I'm going to paraphrase because I haven't looked at it in a couple months, but he looked at those young people and he said, if it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, sweep the streets, you know, so that all the hosts of heaven will look down and say, there is the Michelangelo of street sweepers. And again, I'm paraphrasing that. Mm-hmm. It's pretty close. But every time I listen to that audio, and you can go listen to it on YouTube, and if you're somebody who just needs encouragement today, listen to that in the frame of mind as if Martin Luther King Jr. is talking to you. And I think he's right, that if it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, then do it to the best of your ability.
But I think that what that does reveal is how much maybe people in general, but certainly men, associate their worth and their identity with what they do, and they're not the same, right? You know.
Well, yes and no. This is always. I'm glad you're bringing this up because I have a really strong opinion on this. A lot of people have hit me with this because of what I do. Your identity, this idea that why do men do that? I would just say, no, it's natural. It's actually natural to look at that. But it cannot be the entire source of your identity. In other words, You are a child of God, first and foremost, and you are valued and loved by God. That is the identity that you should first start with.
Yeah.
But you should also take very serious your design, as I've just laid out, and what you do with that. So should all of my identity be the best-selling author in my space? No. But should it be, if I'm in this space, to write books that sell well?
Yeah.
Yes. I hope that makes sense.
It does. Well, I think there's a difference between seeking the highest level of results as possible, but you got to learn to be content to a certain degree.
Yes.
If you don't always get what you thought was a representation of success. Maybe it's not the way you see it. And if we don't learn peace
There you go.
in our life, then none of this is going to work. I don't care how rich, fame, it's irrelevant. If you don't learn in all things to be content, not by compromising,
That's right.
but you have to know you don't always know what's best for you.
Well, you nailed it. It's peace.
Yeah.
I think John Quincy Adams said, duty is ours, results are God's.
Yeah.
Nobody said it any better. Mic drop.
Yeah.
There's where peace comes in. If, in fact, you believe what he said and you live in such a way that I'm going to do the best that I can with the books I write, the shows I do. I'm on Fox News all the time.
Well,
When I
let's
go up there,
let's
I'm
look
trying
at
to be
some.
the best I can. But guess what? Doesn't mean they're going to give me a show.
Well, you wrote, let me find it. Find work you're wired to do, paycheck purpose, proximity principle. I don't know if you have any more coming, but those are three books that we'll put some links up so you all can buy. But, you know, it's funny. We really talked about the essence of the human experience without really kind of breaking down your specifics, and we shouldn't neglect that. So you got this new show. Is it already launched?
Yeah.
Okay.
We launched it a couple months ago. It's called Front Row Seat.
So what exactly? I saw you on Ramsey.
I co-host the Ramsey Show, which is...
And you still do that?
Still do it.
Okay.
I'll be on today for 3 hours
Okay.
after I leave you.
Okay.
It's the second largest radio show in the world. It's one of the top podcasts.
But that's a financial.
Yeah, it's a money show. It's the Dave Ramsey Show. He renamed it 4 years ago, I think, because it's part of the succession plan. So if people know who Dave Ramsey is, he has long been trying to set it up to when he's no longer around, can the organization sustain itself? And one part of that strategy is to have personality.
Gotcha.
And so while I'm the work guy, I'm the win at work guy. If you were to say, who
So
are
you're
you
not necessarily doing financial advice
do.
like he does. You're
Right.
doing. You have another angle that you're adding to the mix.
Well, when I'm a co-host on that show, I will. So today, I'll be on with Jade Warshaw, who's another Ramsey personality. Dave's out somewhere, and he's out.
Making money.
Oh yeah, he's out. The guys, but
He's out getting rich somewhere.
yeah, but he's slowing down.
Yeah.
And so you take 90 days a year, then he's not on the show. Today's a day where, again, I'll probably be the lead host, but sometimes in the co-host seat. But I will speak to the money stuff because I know the money stuff. I know the baby steps. I can give all the advice on that. I can't give the minutia and expertise on investing that Dave can, but all the personalities. There are 3 money personalities, and there's a relationships and psychology guy, John Deloney, and then myself. I'm the work guy, so I'm the work and leadership guy. And so I will speak to some of those calls, and we'll get career calls, we'll get entrepreneurial calls on the show, and so we're doing both. And the other show that I do now, and I put to bed. This was fun. Years of the Ken Coleman Show. It was on Sirius XM, YouTube. I was coaching people. They'd call in. It was kind of like Dr. Phil for people who aren't winning at work. That was a great season, and I loved it. But it hit its limit. And this show, Front Row Seat, is something I've been dreaming about. You'll appreciate the math on this. The math is Inside the Actor's Studio meets Masterclass meets MTV Unplugged. And we have a live studio audience sitting in the round. It's very
nice.
intimate. So it's anywhere from 8 to 12 people that are sitting around me and the guests. And they can raise their hand at any time, and I bring them into the conversation. That's important to me because the first book I ever wrote was called One Question. And I just believe that a question can change our life. It has that kind of power to sit at the feet of people that you admire, to sit with people just in everyday life and learn the power of a question. Jesus modeled this so much in scriptures. If you look at how many times Jesus would answer a question with a question, it's kind of mind-blowing. And I'm just an overly curious guy. And so the heart of the show is to help professionals get better, move up, and lead well. Because if you're getting better, you're bringing a better version of you to work, you're going to get better results. Then you're going to move up. And as you move up in the American work system, you're going to move into a leadership role pretty quickly. And most people won't train you for leadership. So that's what the show is. But
So instead of bringing on some highly successful CEO to make commentary, he's actually saying, here's how I did this. Here's what I've learned.
Yeah.
So you're really giving them deep, real-time advice in living the life that they had hoped it would become. And
give you an
oftentimes,
example. I mean, we had Nikki Haley on, and all of my Trump fans out there just murdered me in the comments. I was like, hey, gang, this isn't a political interview. This is a woman who ran a state. And so the this was a
well, but you have a tendency in your interviews to muckrake accidentally, because weren't you the one that were involved with Chick-fil-A guy?
Oh, the whole thing happened on my
Because of you.
Yeah.
You destroyed this man's life.
No, I made them more money than they'd ever made in a
Amen.
single day. That's the
true.
absolute truth. I can't tell you how many Chick-fil-A operators. That's a whole story.
It's
People are going, what are you talking
amazing
about?
story.
But yeah, the point is I believe that, and we've got everything from Nikki Haley to Will Guidara, who hardly anybody knows, but he won the #1 restaurant in the world, for 11 Madison Park. And this is a guy who wrote a book called Unreasonable Hospitality, and his ability to talk about how we treat each other in the context of the #1 restaurant in the world. That's interesting to me. We just, and so it's a wide range of guests. I like to sit with people that I don't always agree with, but have a conversation that can unite around the idea of what can I learn from somebody that I may not normally want to listen to. There's a lesson there. And you know me, I'm about as convicted of a person. I know exactly what I believe and why. But I believe that understanding is an elixir. And what I mean by that is you're not going to change my mind, and I'm not going to change yours. This I've learned in 50 years of life. But if I can understand you, you might give me a shot at understanding me.
Yeah.
And then change happens. But change doesn't happen because I counterpoint you. Change happens because I listen to you and I understand you. And a healthy person will listen and understand me. And therein lies the mind's ability to then accept new information and change. And so that's what a good conversation is.
For sure. I've always said that, a truly helpful, remarkable conversation is when you leave it, you are either more convicted about what you believe, or you have to reevaluate what you believe. If either of those two things have happened, you've had a really good conversation.
I agree.
And so you said something interesting about, people maybe are reticent to listen to dissension. And I said, first, number one, what are you afraid of? If your belief system can't withstand intellectual scrutiny, maybe you should abandon it. If it can't handle difficulty and challenges, then you don't really know what you believe, because you're kind of just whimsically jumping onto something, feeling comfortable with it. But if you fear dissent, that might be more on you than the philosophy, because why wouldn't you, especially as Christians? The one thing that when I came out as a Christian conservative comic, I made a very specific fan base, but it obviously eliminated a lot of folks who don't want anything to do with it. But one of the things that I've always said about conservatives, I think, and this might be a broad brush, but certainly about how Christianity should be practiced, is to the Christian, to the conservative, if what I believe is in conflict with what is true, I change my beliefs. Whereas to what has become progressive left, if what they believe is in conflict with what is true, they change the truth. Now, we know, as you know, Satan's the father of lies. That's all he has. He has lies. He doesn't have power.
He's really good
he has
at it.
lies.
Yeah.
And if you believe the lies, then he doesn't have to do much else. You just keep walking the path right over the cliff.
You said something a minute ago that I really want to call out.
Yeah.
Because I thought you nailed it. It was really deep. Fear. So this is, I think, too many people, and by the way, this is on the left and the right, so I'm going to be an equal opportunity offender right now. And I really don't care if you're offended, because if you watch me, you'll find that I'm a pretty likable guy, but I know exactly what I believe, but I know why I believe it, and this is what's missing. When all you focus on is what you believe, but you don't do your own work on why you believe it.
For sure.
Now you're fearful when anybody says anything different, because you're like, this is an assault on what I believe is right and true, and I must defend it. And I think to myself, there's a time to take a stand. There always is, and there always will be, to take a stand and defend truth. It's not as much as we think. In other words, when I talk to people that would be liberal, and I'm an unashamed conservative, okay, with a very conservative theology, okay, so now you all can pigeonhole me. However, I don't find myself defending what I believe very often, because I know why I believe it, and the why gives me the opposite of fear, Brad, and it gives me confidence. So I can go sit in a situation, whether it's on Fox. I mean, I'm on Fox Business just about every month now. In a 1 hour, I'm on for the entire hour. And the anchors sometimes, they disagree with me. And I can sit in that seat and be okay with them disagreeing with me, but be equally okay with what I just said and how I said it, and let that sit. And let people do what they want with that. And I find that the more I can understand somebody that I disagree with, then it becomes reciprocal. And this is with healthy people. Now, you're going to be with some friends and family over Thanksgiving where you got to put a boundary up and go, look, Uncle Larry is not capable of having a conversation involving understanding. So therefore, I'm not going to have that conversation. This is not good for my blood pressure. But if we get to a point, and you nailed it on fear, people who believe in truth, it is more incumbent on us to do the homework on the why you believe it. Not because dad taught you that. I'm a pastor's kid. So I grew up, not a black sheep, by the way, but I grew up, and Brad, I went into this world just absolutely equipped, man. But it was all my dad's luggage. And at some point, 23, 24, 25, 26, I was confronted with some real crisis of faith. And at that point, now I got to figure out, why do mom and dad believe that? And do I believe that? And I think too many people are hung up on the what, and they have no background on the why. They couldn't actually, not defend, they couldn't explain their own why if you and I put the light on them. You and I both can explain the why. And I think you nailed that when you are operating out of fear as a Christian, you are not operating out of a place of faith.
Well, and you must not be really confident in what you believe, because you think it's too fragile. Well, either this is true or it's not, man.
Nailed it.
And get locked into it. What people don't understand, and I created this show called The God Experience, which was a combination of my original career, which is magic and sleight of hand, in combination with philosophy, to try to prove that God is real. It was just me being an artist, because I can't not create. That's how I do things. But one of the things that I've made it very clear is that, the materialist is a closed system, right? It believes in only that which we can observe and test and repeat. And that's where the scientific method is very useful. Who, what, when, where, and how. And these are all beautiful and crucial ways to engage reality. But it's descriptive. All those things do is describe what God has already done.
Exactly.
There's one word, and I call it the second most powerful three-letter word in human history. It's a word that science has no access to, and they can't, because who, what, when, where, and how is physics. It's the physical word. But there's a metaphysical word that is added that they try to conjoin to what they're doing, and it doesn't fit. It's a metaphysical word. Why? The moment I go into why, I'm in the transcendent. Because there is no why if we're an accident, if we just evolved out of chemicals and whatever, without an architect, without a designer, without a purpose, without a meaning, without a teleology, we're just existing till we go into eternal oblivion. Now, that is what you have to believe if you're an honest atheist. And Bertrand Russell did, and Nietzsche did, and it causes angst. Because it's nihilism, baby. Where else can I go? Yeah. So they literally will say things like, I create my own meaning. I say, yeah, but that's a delusion, because if there's no meta meaning, then there's no mini meaning. You can pretend, right, and you are, but it doesn't actually have substance. They can't grasp that because humans can't function without meaning, and they don't know.
It's a silly statement to me. I'm not a smart guy. But
clearly
smart, I know. And smart people have said things like that, but I would literally scratch my head and lean in and go, how can one create something that the creator, you can't recreate.
No.
You are, the very statement that I've created my own, no, you haven't. Mm-hmm. God gave you a soul, which is where emotion comes from. It's such a nonsensical idea. I've always said this, we've all said it before, but atheists have way more faith than we do.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's also an old
but it's true
cult of worship of self. I just trust kind of myself, and my perspective and my subjectivity suddenly becomes a reality and truth, and it's enough for me, and I don't need God to have morals. And it's like, well, then you don't have morals. You would just have subjective desires or preferences, but they don't have immutable truth. There's nothing, but they can't grasp it because we're designed to seek meaning. So when they try to pretend there's meaning, knowing it's not real, you kind of short circuit. You can't function like that. It's almost like you're going to lose your head. So you have to just somehow convince yourself that this is enough, and it's self-delusion. But what else do you have? Well, listen, we're getting towards the end, and I could talk to you all day, Ken. Maybe we can do it again. But there's a couple more questions just quickly that I do want to sort of wrap it with. But I want to help people, and this is a unique. You're as a guest, and I got a ton of them I've had, but I love what you're doing, because I don't know if I've had anybody that can help people on the day-to-day, and yet this is pretty much what everybody does every day, is go to work. I mean, it's kind of like a function of your life that is about as crucial and as important as it can be. So it does matter that you can do it without being miserable, because you're stuck. So the thing I would like you to kind of, if you can, and it can't be that simple, and maybe the books will help because they go deeper. But what about the guy or the gal who says, I make a decent living, it's working, I get my 2 weeks off vacation, my family's happy, I got that house, I did all the things, but I got to tell you, Ken, I don't like this job. I don't like it. You told me to find what I'm good about, and you know what? The thing I really love in it, it's not what I ended up doing, and I'm kind of miserable. And now and I know you must have had this question a million times.
It's not too late.
But certainly you feel like I'm too deep in debt to I can't lose this gig.
Sure.
And I can't start over and become this artist, whatever I thought I was going to be.
That's fair.
So what the heck, don't give me your platitudes. This is real now. Quit giving me this bumper sticker mentality, the quick Tony Robbins. I'm really asking you, help me through this thing, because I don't know how to get out.
Sure. Well, context is everything. So number one, I would never tell somebody to just, up and quit their job and shirk their responsibilities. So there's going to be a version of you that you can execute on. So let's just say you're in your 50s, you got a lot of debt, you got a day job you don't love, but you feel like the boat has sailed. Well, again, using the methodology here, if I use what I do best to do work I love to produce results that matter, how do I figure out what that is? And so the first thing you got to do is reflection. So let's just look at reflection. I want you to ask 3 questions. These are very specific. Who are the people that I most want to help? And I recommend doing this morning and night for about 7 days. May come to you sooner, but give it with pencil, by the way, and write it out. We know from psychology studies that writing things out and getting it out of our head is a much more revelatory exercise. So who are the people I want to help is the first question. Second question is, what problem or desire do they have? Now, as you've been answering that first question, Brad, who are the people I want to help, you're already describing the person. So the second question is a little easier to answer. What is the problem or desire that they have? And then the third question is, what are the solutions to that problem or desire that light me up? So we have to start there. And I'm dealing with the cynicism, I'm dealing with the lack of belief in the way you set up the question, because I've taken that call.
Well, they feel compromised.
I get it. Well, they feel like they don't have any options.
Yeah.
What we're starting with is to show you options.
Okay.
I can't get you fired up until you can see it. So this first exercise doesn't involve quitting your job. Doesn't involve you going back to school, because this is what everybody thinks. Oh, I got to go back to school, therefore I can't afford it. It's too late. No, it's not. So let's get context. Those 3 questions are going to begin to reveal some very specific things. Take the assessment. If you don't want to take my assessment, sit down with people that you know really well who be honest with you and ask them, what am I really good at doing? What kind of stuff lights me up? I just enjoy it. Time seems to disappear. And what results always make me happy? When I've produced a result in my life, that's my methodology. You don't need the assessment. But just begin to see this. Now we've got 2 information points. I know the answer to my heart. The people I want to help, problem or desire they have, and solution I get excited about is all about my heart. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm looking at my identity as I'm designed. That's the talent, passion, mission piece. So once we have those 2 things, we now can begin to see, oh, okay, well, had I figured this out 30 years ago, I would have gone to school to be an engineer. Okay, can't do that right now because of my debt situation. But I can take some online classes and I can realize that I can actually become an engineer, and I can become an engineer in a different role, in a different way. So now, because I'm 55 and I've got 100,000 in debt, how I use what I do best to do what I love to produce results that matter is different. However, can I stay in the day job and knock the 100 grand in debt out while I'm incrementally getting better, adding some tools, setting up a future, adding some outside income, which helps me pay off the debt faster? Can I build a bridge to a shorter season of life that looks very different than the dream version of Ken's assessment, but still, in fact, allows me to, at the age of 55, use what I do best to do what I love to produce results? Can I do that? The answer to that is absolutely, unequivocally yes. And I'll give you a quick story. I started in broadcasting at 33-ish. I was in Atlanta with 3 kids under the age of 3. I wasn't making a ton of money, and I thought I was delusional because I thought God had called me to run for office, and then began to doubt the venue at which I could do that. And so, where do you want me, God? Where can I influence people and use my gift of communication? And so, through a long process of just self-analysis and looking at my story, God begins to speak to me and said, broadcasting is the place. But that's intimidating. Very competitive world, by the way.
Sure.
And I had a lot of producers tell me I was too old. I had one guy tell me I didn't have enough talent to make it in a top 10 radio market. I'd like to call him today and remind him that I'm hosting the second largest radio show in the world today for 3 hours.
Yeah.
But that's not necessary. And I know our time is short, so I'm trying to land it quickly.
Well, it's not short. I just didn't want to keep you.
I'm good. But I want to land this plane for people. And so in my own journey, I started at 33. I didn't go to college because I figured out you don't have to go to college to be a broadcaster. You just got to get good at it. And you got to spend time around people that are doing it and in places where it is happening. Thus, the #1 best-selling book, The Proximity Principle, which was written about my journey and the people that I put myself around, the places I put myself in, and then God honored it just as though he honored you, and where we started our conversation. The stories I could tell, the Chick-fil-A deal. I'm hosting a Saturday radio show in Gainesville, Georgia. Do you know how many people listen to radio at 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon? The guy who was on the board, because he had to be, and my wife, because she's a good woman. And God took that interview. I didn't even ask him about the thing that he went on, and placed me on CNN.
I know.
That was the beginning of my journey. So I would say to that person, it's not too late to do the work that God wired you to do. Can you do it to the level that you could have at 30 without debt? No.
Okay.
And I appreciate the context of the question, because that's the right.
Well, because I promise you, a lot of people listening right now are not happy with your answer, because they were waiting for you know, a magic phrase that fixes it. And you're saying you still got work to do. You still got some sacrifice, and it's going to maybe even be harder because you've gotten used to a kind of a lifestyle that doesn't have the extracurricular activities. And you're saying, guys, you can still get it, but unfortunately, there's still a lot ahead of you.
You got to build a bridge, is what I said, and that takes time.
They don't hear that.
I know they don't want to hear it, but you also said, and I appreciate how you know, first of all, the platitude thing makes me laugh because I think my content is way more than platitude.
But doesn't it feel like they try to make it simplistic and people go, it's not easy, man.
Not my answer.
This stuff is hard.
Well, you saw what I just said. What I prescribe to somebody is absolutely you can get there, but it won't look the way it could have looked had you done it 30 years ago. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
But we're not chasing notoriety. We're not chasing numbers in the answer that I gave you. You know what we're chasing? Meaning. Where does meaning come from? From our Creator. Because when you use what you do best, God gave you that talent. When you do what makes your heart come alive, God gave you a heart. When you produce results that matter to you, that's coming from your story.
Yeah.
And God has been orchestrating that the whole time. And when you do that, then in fact, you are doing what David talks about, what God knit you together in your mother's womb to do. And then God gets the glory. And then he goes, yes, they figured it out. I created Brad Stine for a specific time and a specific task. There's a reason you and I both love history. There's a reason why, multiple reasons why you and I weren't planted in colonial America.
Right.
For such a time as this.
It's hard to think of yourself as significant, though. It really is to think that I have a very important role to play in God's big picture. It's hard to think of ourselves that way.
Take a spark plug out of a car and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, no, you're right. No, you're right. And that's what I'm saying. I just am very careful about not trying to have some easy nomenclature like that fixes it. It's hard. But I think what maybe you're getting at is important. If somebody listening right now or watching says to themselves, you know what, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm at a place where I'm going to try. I'm going to do it anyways. Once they do what appears to be maybe a little bit more than they had bargained for, and it's like, I don't know if I'm going to get overwhelmed by this or too tired.
Can I give you a really specific example?
I'll bet you, though, when they get there, they're going,
you just nailed. Let me give you a real example.
Yeah.
Let's speak to somebody who's wired like you and me. Okay, this is a very practical example. Okay. I'm going to speak to the camera because I think somebody needs to hear this. Okay. If you're a person who loves people, and you've got people skills, and let's say you want to speak to an audience. Maybe, you like what Brad and I do. You're like, Ken, I'd love to do keynotes in front of thousands of people. I'd like to write best-selling books. I'd like to have a show, all the things. And I just feel like that's 5,000 miles of life away. Okay, so here's what I want you to know. You may never do what Brad and I do, and that's okay. But you may be wired just like Brad and I. But instead of being intimidated by how high the mountain is, why don't you find somebody in your zip code where you can do that thing? And maybe it's teaching a class. Maybe it's showing up and mentoring some young men or some young ladies. And you take this communication tool that God gave you, and it's not formed, and you know you're not a really world-class communicator, but you know you've got talent and you've got a heart for people. Show up and do that. Coach one person. You want to be a coach and have a big-time coaching business? Coach one person. And instead of thinking about the results that the world measures us by, the amount of likes, shares, subscribers, money you're making, delete all that and allow yourself to let your heart feel how amazing it feels to sit with a person or to communicate to a person. That will do more for you than any best-selling book. And I say that to say that I remember the first time, The Proximity Principle, I did not expect it to be a bestseller. I cannot even believe by God's providence the week it came out, there wasn't a lot of competition. And thanks to Dave Ramsey and his organization and the push, it debuted #1. And I was sitting in a hotel room in Oregon, last stop on the book tour, very insecure about how the book was doing. Is it going to be a bestseller? That's all I cared about. Please be a bestseller. Please be. And that's carnal. But I'm going to be very honest.
Well, why not want the best for it, though?
I know, but I'm telling you, I was consumed with it.
Okay.
Because I was at Ramsey and all the other personalities had best-selling books.
Right.
My point is I'm surrounded by a
got you.
scoreboard.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Just being real.
Yeah, no, that's real.
And I woke up that morning and 3 hours or 2 hours behind, and my phone was just flooded. And I put the glasses on. I'm reading, congratulations. You know, I'm like, what? And finally, number one. And I remember being overwhelmed with just joy. Pure carnal joy. Joy that was like, I did it.
Okay.
I mean, it was a slog. It was a long slog to get here. And it's crossing the finish line and realizing you beat everybody, and it feels really good. So I called everybody back, called my wife, had a sweet moment. We cried. I just cried. I let it all come out. Like, I can't believe I made it. And it was really sweet. And after about 30, 45 minutes of connecting with people and thanking them and all the kind of things, I looked at the clock and I got to get ready. And so I get in the shower, come out of the shower, and I'm literally shaving in the hotel, you know, mirror. You've been there a billion times. And I was like, all the euphoria had worn off.
Yeah, right.
In 45 minutes in a shower and a shave.
Now what?
Well, here's what I thought. That's when I was really convicted to say, for the rest of my life, people can call me and I can think of myself as a #1 best-selling author. But in that moment, I realized that's not what this is about. That felt really cool, but that was a feeling. The feeling has already subsided, and I realized I'm still Stacy's husband. I'm Ty Chase and Josie's dad. I'm Jamie's brother. I'm Ken and Barb's son. I'm so-and-so's teammate. And I'm still the same guy with the same brokenness, same challenges, same faith, same guy. And it was then that I realized the best feeling was going to be later that night at the book signing. And a guy came up to me and he began to weep as he began to tell me his journey of how his dad crapped on his dream. He started listening to the Ken Coleman Show, started to believe the dream again, bought the book, had already made some huge connections. And I was like, can I pray for you? And this is in Barnes & Noble. And there's a long line of people, and I just was like, I don't care. I'm a pastor's kid. I just don't care. I'll pray for anybody in a drop of a hat. And it was eyeball to eyeball with that young man, realizing that my puny little book was going to make a big difference in his life. That's why I do what I do. And so it was not about the acclaim. It was about a person. So to that person I just talked to, it's not about the size of the influence. It's about the actual influence. And the meaning that I'm selling to people has nothing to do with your paycheck. That's why the book's entitled From Paycheck to Purpose. So that's what I would say to that person.
When people want to go deeper, and you've given a lot of wonderful stories and real practical results from folks, but what would you recommend, first off, how to watch you, follow you best, but also get maybe the best? Is it a book? Is it how can they start consolidating everything you've just taught them and say, I'm ready to dive
for
in?
that person, I think I'll tell you this: self-awareness is a superpower, and we don't teach self-awareness in schools. We don't teach the technical side of self-awareness. I would get the Get Clear assessment. You get it at kencoleman.com.
Okay,
it's a $30 assessment, and again, it's going to give you a very detailed report. This is not personality stuff. This is, I'm going to walk away with, for the first time in my life, a purpose statement that I can now overlay my life in the world of work. I was created to use what I do best. It's going to give you your top 3 talents. To do what I love to do. It's going to give you your top 3 passions. To produce a result that matters to me. It's going to give you your missional result. It's a wildly amazing tool for you to go,
But is it going to be revelatory? They're going to go, this is me? Or are they going to go, well, I know who I am. I just don't know how to get there.
It's either or.
Okay.
For some, it will be revelatory. Who just have been crapped on their whole life and nobody believed in them. And
so like reimagining the passion, the vision.
Tie it back into the voicemail I left you all those years ago.
Yeah.
When you read your purpose statement, it ought to feel like me calling Brad going, Brad!
You're exactly what I was looking for. And that's so rare to hear.
And you read the purpose statement, I want you to read it as though God is telling you that. Because by the way, they're your answers. There's no secret magic to this assessment. We just ask you really good questions and we give you your results back. I would say start there if you're the person who needs the boost of confidence, that's the person that goes, I already knew that, but I need somebody to confirm it.
Yeah.
Or if you're the person who's lost. What you need when you're lost is light. And the light is self-awareness. And it is not mumbo-jumbo New Age crap. This is, again, Psalm 139. Some people are watching this and listening to this, Brad, and they don't know how they're wired. They know little pieces of it, but life has been so hard on them.
Yeah.
And Satan has used that hard pain to distract them and to confuse them. And clarity is what Jesus brings.
Yeah. Well, I feel like what you're also, I hope, encouraging these folks to hear is, the dream doesn't have to die. No. You just has to be rekindled, and that's what you're trying to say, because I'm sure a lot of people do regret, why didn't I do this? That's the greatest, I years ago heard this, they did interviews with folks that old folks homes, 80s, dying, they're on the end. And they just asked them, what would you have done differently? And the number one question was, take more risks. Yeah. Like, why didn't I always wanted to go to Paris. Why didn't I go? I always wanted to try that start that food truck. Why didn't I just do it? And that fear of either not wanting to become what you think people have told you are and be a self-fulfilling prophecy, or not believing in yourself, or not just, or being caught up in what culture has taught you is what is expected. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what the greatest fear is. It's the unknown. Yeah. We all get this when we're driving in a car and a torrential downpour comes down to where you can't see beyond the hood of the car. What do? You slow down and you pull over. If you've ever been in a dark cave where you can't see your hand in front of your face, it's a terrifying proposition. The devil uses uncertainty as the strongest weapon. And so it is a natural paralyzing effect on us to not know. So the answer is to get more knowledge. And the assessment, again, is a tool that gives you more knowledge about yourself. And so the more you can see yourself as God sees you, and certainly as those of us who do life with you and are cheering you on, going, go for it, go for it. I mean, every person who's watching and listening right now that's crippled with uncertainty can go back, because I could sit with them. And within 5 minutes, I could pull stories out of them of people who did believe in them. Who I love that you shared this story, because at the time I was just a young agent trying to make more money. But I did believe in you.
I know, but I don't think people understand how much impact sometimes they do have on people's lives. And it was nothing other than a interaction with somebody that you thought could be helpful to what you were trying to accomplish.
Well, I told you in no uncertain terms, I want to hitch on my wagon to you.
Yes.
You are.
But how few times do we hear that in our life, man? Don't.
So, fun lesson today. Find somebody today that's in your life. Maybe somebody at the grocery store. Maybe it's somebody who serves you in a business capacity. Could be a clerk at a grocery store. Could be somebody selling you something. Look for opportunities to capture a moment for somebody and go, you did a really good job at that. Yeah. Just that is soul healing at times. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up. And I think if we all would do better to get our antenna up and tell somebody today, you're really good at that. Yeah.
And I think you would be shocked to realize that for those who are waiting for that, that person or that boss or that loved one or whatever to say that to you, because you need to hear it. I can say this, you can jumpstart some of that by going to do it for somebody else.
I agree.
I will say this. Sometimes just whatever you're looking for, go find somebody else and give it to them first. Maybe that's sometimes it's your turn to be the answer to somebody else's prayer. Yeah. It's not just you always getting what you want. I mean you as in all of us. We want our prayers answered instead of going, maybe you're the answer to somebody. Maybe it's their turn to have you, that you don't realize how much you impact people, right? With the things you've accomplished. And now with your career and whatever, and your business acumen and whatever, ironically, you've become the very thing that you're teaching by teaching that very thing that you've become. It's an interesting world.
Zig Ziglar said it best. I'll leave you with this. Ziglar said it best. it's the law of reciprocity. And he basically said, if you help other people get what they want in life, you'll get what you want in life. And you said it in a very different, simplistic way as we started, but it's absolutely right. Give yourself away. You, in fact, were designed to be a gift. That's the whole point I've been making about work being a contribution.
Yes.
Every time you do a good job, you are giving yourself away. My friend Rabbi Daniel Lappin says it so well. He said, when you do good work for people, the customer shows you your appreciation. He calls $1 a certificate of appreciation.
Yeah.
And that is, we've made commerce evil. And I don't want to take us down that path, but I'm getting at the point that when I make my contribution, someone says thank you in the form of dollars. And we can't forget that what is an economic principle is a spiritual principle first. When you give, you receive.
Well, and people forget too that all dollars represent is labor. When we used to just be, I need a chicken, I got a blanket, you want to trade, when bartering was how people got along, and then we came to a place in our world where we go, yeah, but I don't need eggs, I need this, well, I don't have that, well, then you don't get it. It's like, how do I survive? How about we create something that represents whatever you needed.
Value.
And then that'll be enough, and that'll represent, so everybody can play. And that's how we got money, so that you're not stuck with, I don't need your product. Well, Ken, thank you so much for coming on and just talking about these things. I can't wait for people to see what you're doing. Obviously, listen to it. Do one quick thing, if you wouldn't mind. This is just for subscribers, those who give me $3 a month. And it's just a special little thing that only you get. But I'd like you've met some amazing people. You've interviewed some amazing people. If you could just quickly tell one story of somebody that maybe is the most famous or the most amazing person, but you heard them tell you something, or an insight or thing that was so mind-bending to you. It's like, it was so, it was just something that was that, give us that story. If something comes to mind.
Oh, I got it right now.
First, tell them who the person is so that people will now want to hear the answer.
Coach K, the legendary Duke basketball coach.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Hall of Famer, 6 national championships.
So this was what the most poignant thing you'd ever heard in your life, the most revelatory, it was so out of left field that you never forgot.
It was the most encouraging professional hug that I ever got.
Hey guys, I'm interrupting my own interview. If you want the answer that you haven't heard yet, go to bradstine.com and join one of the 3 tiers. It is the militia of the mind, it is the warrior level, or it is the special forces. And then you'll get all kinds of special content and bonus answers to make you smarter than you could ever imagine. Go there now, jump on and join the Mighty 10,000. God bless you, man.
Hey, I want to say one other thing about you really quick.
Okay. Well, as long as it's about me.
Yeah, no, I just, this needs to be said. I'm a guy that has dedicated the last 11 years of my life to helping people be authentically who they were created to be. And you model that. And what I love about you, and I know your audience loves this, but I just want to say it, you are the authentic, genuine article, and that is not an easy thing to do. And you've done it, and I appreciate you, I honor you, and you've modeled the way.
Wow. Well, thank you, man. That's very kind. Because I know me. So, whenever someone compliments us, we probably go, nah, you don't know the other side of me. But thank you.
Well, authenticity is a beautiful thing.
I think so.
There's good and bad in that.
Yeah.
But the real article.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know what, though? That's what God would tell us to be. Be authentic. The Bible is filled with stories of the great people that did terrible things. And he said, but those stories still to be told, and I still love them. Yeah. And they're still in the big book because their life had meaning and purpose. As does yours. I wish you guys will jump on the Front Row Seat podcast. Is it a podcast?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. Or anywhere you get your podcast. And KenColeman.com.
Go to Ken Coleman. Get the books. If you heard what he said today and it's something that inspired you and you want to know more, hey, you can go deep now. Take your time to learn the things he's taught you and the things that he's done with some of the biggest, most successful people in the world. So this isn't theory. It really works. But, you're going to have to do some work. It's not going to come easy. Folks, remember, this is crucial. if you're a Christian, you're the last truth teller on earth. We have seen in the last few years what it looks like when lies are running the show. No more. You have to be the ones that give true north to the world. And that's what Christians do. If they ever say you're politically incorrect, always say thank you for the compliment. Nothing's more important than standing against, people that don't want you to be outside of their thumb. No. Use the agency God has given you. Speak truth at all times. And remember, I'm just a comedian, maybe a little actor, maybe a little bit of this and bit of that. But I am doing what I'm supposed to do, which is putting the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday.